Hello, welcome to Rosie's Preserving School. Today we're going to be talking about this beast, ginger, and there's quite a lot to know, and we're going to be making some preserved ginger in syrup. This is one I made earlier for the photographs as usual, and you can see how luscious it looks there. This is one I bought before Christmas because I didn't have time to make it, or I hadn't thought about making it, and I needed it for something we were doing before Christmas. And this little jar cost an eye-watering amount of money. I think it was something like £6 something. This one probably cost me £1.50, £2 and a little bit of time. So it's well worth doing, and it's well worth using in the things that you make. Ginger comes in obviously its root form. It's not really a root as such, it's a rhizome. So it's a bit like a lily that grows along the top of the soil with its sort of actual roots going down into the soil. And then it grows every year these very tall, slender leaves. I think you can grow. I've never been successful, but I think you can. And then, of course, it comes in the familiar powdered form, which is convenient and easy to use in baking and so on, but has nowhere near the flavour of the actual ginger root. All spices reduce in flavour the longer you keep them and the more they're processed. And I don't mean that dry ginger is a processed food. I mean, it's been processed, it's been peeled, it's been dried, and it's been ground, and as soon as you grind them down, all spices start to lose some of their flavour. So, but it is convenient to use, obviously, big chunks of ginger in your cakes, it's not sometimes something that's very palatable. I'm going to start making the preserved stem ginger because it does take quite a long time to cook. It's not by any means complicated. I've got some water in my pan here, just any amount of water, enough water to cover the pieces of ginger. And I'm going to turn that on to start heating up. I've already peeled some of my ginger. And after telling everybody last week to put it in the freezer overnight, so that you can scrape it with a teaspoon really easily to get the peel off, I, of course, forgot to do that. So I've peeled mine and, that's fine. And then you cut it into pieces. I won't do that onto my finger. You cut it into sort of chunky pieces. That one's probably all right like that. They won't be sort of as even as you buy them in a jar, where they're all sort of peeled to a shape. But I think that's a shame to waste all the ginger, really. So they're going to go into my pan. And I'll carry on cutting these up. The ones you buy are all very uniform, and I expect they're peeled and shaped by machine with horrendous amounts of waste, but maybe that's what goes into the dried ginger, who knows. So that's that. And then I'm just going to thinly peel. I'm not going to scrape with a teaspoon because I didn't freeze it. That's the idea of doing that. It loosens the skin and you can scrape it off easier if you've frozen it, but I forgot. So just take this off, and I'll probably do a piece. The big pieces of root are known as ginger hands for obvious reasons. And if you're lucky enough to have a sort of Asian market nearby, go there and buy them. Don't buy the little packets in supermarkets. Go and get the big hands, and you can bring it back and make lots of lovely things with it. By far the cheapest way of doing it, or most economic, should I say. Don't like to make out that it's cheap, but it's sort of doing somebody out of a livelihood. Another little piece there. I haven't found a use for this yet, but I expect there will be one. or this peel with bits of ginger stuck to it. That can go in. These can get cut up. Take a piece of skin off of there. And the big question is, I think I'll do another piece off of here because I don't think I've got quite enough to fill my big jar. That would be a shame. Makes a great gift as well if if you've got somebody who loves ginger, to make them a big jar of preserved stem ginger would be a lovely gift. Oh, that's a tougher bit. This is like sort of peeling Jerusalem artichokes, isn't it? It's a nightmare. These knobbly edges. So what I'm going to do is, I've got most of that peeled. I'm going to cut it and then take the other ends off that I can't get to. Then you don't lose so much. Because when we make the ginger cordial, it just all goes in, skin and all, because the actual ginger is cooked out and taken out before the cordial is made. So that's quite an economic thing to make with root ginger. I know some of you made it before Christmas and have enjoyed it. Right, last few bits. Oh, missed a bit. Got to remember, like garlic and chili, not to rub your eyes after you've done this. Ah, good. Who's that? Brenda, you've tried it, have you? Your flat spoon. Yeah, I mean, it is a good idea, and it's Brenda's bought the ginger peeler from Lakeland, which is like a flattened teaspoon, and that's what I was going to do, is scrape this with the bowl end of a teaspoon, but of course I forgot to put it in the freezer first, but never mind. So I'll leave that to now cook. It's got to cook for about 30 minutes and become tender, hopefully. Oh, Karis is here. Welcome, Karis. And I now want to sort of tell you a bit about ginger, because it's a wonderful thing. It's got many, many properties. And as I said, it's related to turmeric and cardamom. It all come from the same family, and they all grow in a similar way in this sort of elongated rhizome that can be harvested and used. Its main sort of what would you call it, property, the medicinal bit is called gingerol, and it's well known for sort of aiding digestion and all sort of stomach upsets and things like that, and especially morning sickness. For people who suffer from morning sickness, we're advised to sip ginger tea or to nibble ginger biscuits or something like that, just to ward off. And it helps with nausea in whatever setting really, but especially useful for morning sickness, because you can't take any proprietary drugs, of course, and so there's not much left to help with the problem. It's also good to fight flu and colds, and you can again heat it in, put boiling water on it, add some lemon juice, and then when it's cooled, add some honey, and then just sip that. You should never add honey to hot things, because all its antibacterial properties get destroyed by the heat. So always add that at the end, or take it separately. Sip the ginger and lemon, and then have your honey on a teaspoon or something, and then you've got the actual benefits. It's also anti-inflammatory, very powerful anti-inflammatory, which helps with all kinds of forms of arthritis and things, swollen joints and all that kind of thing. It's very, very helpful for that. It's an antioxidant. It helps with weight loss. They've done a study as recently as 2019 where ginger was found to aid the ratio between hip and waist and the sort of BMI, that sort of band around your middle where older people, especially me, tend to get a bit of a spare tire, and it's supposed to help with that. So I must give that a go, I think. So keep talking about it. It improves brain function. All these things are proven. They're not me just sort of thinking, oh, what can I say ginger's good for? And it also helps to lower high blood pressure and insulin, high levels of blood sugar. So an all-round good guy, and this is coming up now nicely. But I do think, I don't know if you're noticing, there's a bit of a theme developing every week where the things that we're doing have all got these wonderful properties. They may not be the same properties, but they've all got powerful properties. Things like lemons and vinegar and the other things that we've used have all got these kinds of built-in natural medicinal qualities, and we can find out about that now and prove it, if you like, but bearing in mind that most of these things were discovered and utilized thousands of years ago and have come forward in time through all of our recipes and our received wisdom, you know, learnt at your mother's knee and all that kind of thing. All the things that we found, like the elder tree last week, phenomenal properties, as powerful as some modern drugs. And now, because we become immune to the drugs, they're beginning to bring back these natural things that we can utilize instead and sort of give our bodies a bit of a break from the relentless, you know, tablets and all the rest of it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got a bag full of tablets I have to take every day. I don't want people to throw out everything, but I do think it's remarkable that from Stone Age times onward, people recognized what was good for them, recognized what made them better, and used it. And we've still got it in recipes now, but we don't know why they're there. We're not aware of those properties so much. It's not instinctive, and it isn't learnt wisdom really, you know, in the home or by observation, which is a great shame. And as we go on through the year, we'll find that this keeps on cropping up. And the things that were preserved were the things that were good for us. I mean, we're not going to spend all the time making and preserving things that actually harm us. I won't say all of them are good for us. I mean, you know, there'll be some treats in there that don't sort of magically aid something. But a lot of these ingredients that are in a lot of preserves, they're common to a lot of things, have these distinctive properties. And I think that's a very exciting thing and something that perhaps we ought to explore on a day-to-day basis. I don't think there are, you know, obviously there's herbalists, there's people who specialize in all this kind of thing, but they're few and far between. I'm talking about the everyday knowledge, and that's sort of what's missing at the moment, that the joined up bit that we don't get. But what I'd like you to do, if you're interested in this, because I can't possibly, you know, if you go on and Google ginger, I mean, you'll be there a fortnight. Look into it a bit more, because it is fascinating and there is a lot of information there that I can't deliver in the time that I've got. But it all starts to build a picture of just goodness, really. And you know, if you're using these things, it's good for you, it's good for your family. You haven't got to worry about all sorts of chemicals and everything else that you might be allergic to or become allergic to, or that you will develop a resistance to, you know, something that might be good for you. So ginger, all round good guy. And what I'm going to do while this is cooking, because you know, it's going to take a while, I'm going to show you what I've been making, and you might want to write this down. It's not a complicated recipe, but it's for a sweet pickled ginger. So it's very, very similar to the stem ginger that we're doing, but it's a pickle. It's got vinegar in it and other things. So it's the ginger isn't cooked, but the kind of vinegar pickle that the ginger goes into is cooked, and that's what I'm going to do in a few minutes. I'm just going to ask Trev to put this over onto my home hob, because I need this one just to do the vinegar bits. Here, if you could just switch the hob on and then take this over. Okay, take it down then. I'll turn that down a bit because I'm not going to turn it off. Now, we've got 270 grams or 9 ounces of root ginger, and I've peeled it and I've sliced it very thinly. Now, I bought one of these online. Don't. It's not great, but I've left it in here for now. So I did this last night, and I sliced it very thinly. And over this, I've put 50 grams or 2 ounces of coarse sea salt and left it overnight. And this will take out the liquid in the ginger. We don't want it diluting the vinegar because it won't keep. And I've just left it like this because you can see in the bottom, this has got holes in the bottom, and you can see the amount of liquid that's come out of that ginger. And that's the point of salting things. So now I'm going to quickly put this in some water I've got here, just to rinse off the salt. We don't need to get rid of every last little bit, but we don't want it to be overly salty. And then I've got a pan, and I'm going to put it into the pan 450 mils or 9 fluid ounces of vinegar. Now, I've got cider vinegar here. Ideally, it would be rice wine vinegar, but unfortunately, our local shop, the shops here don't have it, and so I've just used cider vinegar, but it would be good to use rice wine vinegar because it's more delicate and it would be more traditional. I'm just going to go and drain this ginger. Right, so I've got that in my little foldy colander there, and I've got my vinegar on here. I'm just going to drain that, and I'm going to put in the vinegar 125 grams or 4 ounces of caster sugar. And that's just going to make our sweet pickle. I'm going to stir that just till it dissolve it, and then we'll just cook it lightly to make a bit of a syrup, a vinegar syrup. Into that vinegar, I need 2 Thai chilies, these little tiny ones, the little thin ones. So they're just going to be sliced thinly, if I can see my knife. Hold the end. How much salt did I use? Tracy's asking. 50 grams, 2 ounces. It's not critical, but that will be about the right amount for that amount of ginger. So I'm going to leave the seeds. You can take them out if you want to, but they tend to increase the heat a bit. My holding stalk has come off, which is a pain, but never mind. So I've got my stir to dissolve the sugar. And I'm going to put the chili into the vinegar. Now I've got some kitchen paper here. I'm going to just blot this ginger with it because we don't want it all too wet from the rinsing water. It doesn't have to be dry, but you know, just get the most of the water off of it. Because as I've said before, if things are going to be pickled, they need a 5% acetic acid level, and if you have too much moisture, too much water, that's the point of salting it overnight, is to remove the water out of the ginger so it doesn't come out into the vinegar and dilute it. Otherwise it won't keep it, it won't preserve it. So that's pretty much blotted. Dropped a piece on the floor, I think. No, can't see that. So I've got my big jar here. I'll just move this out of the way, otherwise I'm going to spill it. Turn that up a bit. And I'm just going to put the ginger into the jar. I may have been over optimistic with the amount of ginger, with the size of the jar, I mean, and the ginger may not fill it, but it won't matter because it'll be just for us. So. Everything's steaming up. Right. Right, so that's cooking away nicely. So I'll just go over the ingredients again. So it's 270 grams or 9 ounces of root ginger, and peeled and sliced very thinly. I sliced it on a mandolin carefully, mind your fingers, not the mandolin that's what I bought that for, to do that, but it was hopeless. So I went back to my old mandolin, which terrifies me because it's sort of no guard, no nothing. But anyway, I was careful and managed it. So then it's put into something. You can just put it into a bowl. You don't have to put it so it can drain. I left it in there because it was convenient, but you can just do it in a bowl. Put your 50 grams or 2 ounces of salt, I use sea salt, through the ginger, just mix it through and leave it overnight. And then the liquid that comes out of the ginger, you need to drain. Rinse off the ginger and pat it dry with kitchen paper. Now in the pan, we have 450 ml or 9 fluid ounces of rice wine vinegar, if possible, 125 grams and 4 ounces of caster sugar, and 2 red Thai chilies thinly sliced. If you've got a few white peppercorns around the place, then put those in as well. I don't, so I'm going to leave them out. Caris, the jar I've got is a 720 ml. you can see this is a 220, I think, and this is the 720 jar. So you can see the sort of relative size. And put that down because it's heavy and I don't want to drop it. We're all getting vinegar in our throats here because right. So that's bubbled away now for a bit. You won't get a thick syrup with it. It's just a sweetened vinegar. And if you've got, as I say, if you've got, you know, about a teaspoonful of white peppercorns, put those in as well. But I don't. And in these times, I can't really be going all over the place to shops looking for things. And black, I think, black peppercorns would just be too overwhelming. They're deceptively strong. So then just pour your vinegar in to the jar and pour the last little bit. And let it, give it a few minutes just to sort of settle, because it will kind of go down a bit. Try and pour that last bit in the top. There we are. What I'm going to do is just poke it with my knife, just make sure there aren't any air pockets in the middle, because this is so layered, all this ginger. You know, you need to make sure you haven't trapped any air lower down. And it also distributes the chilies a bit more. Smells fantastic, actually. Turn that off for a minute. So I'm going to seal it up now. Ow, that's hot. Give the jar a bit of a wipe on the outside. And that looks really delicious. It's unusual. Again, it's simple to make, a few minutes time. You know, the most time-consuming bit is slicing the ginger, but if you've got an efficient mandolin or something, it's the job of a few minutes. It looks lovely with its chilies going through it, and it's fantastic to have in the cupboard. You know, if you like stir fries and Asian cooking, anything like that, you've got it there. You don't have to worry whether you've got any fresh available, because we haven't always got the ingredients we need for what we fancy making. You know, it's all very well, but if you've got that in the cupboard, you can just use that. You might want to chop it up a bit more, but the rest of it will just keep in the vinegar like any other pickle. It will just sit there, so you don't need to worry about it. So that's the pickled ginger. Now going back to our stem ginger in syrup, I'm just going to test this with my knife now. It's nice and tender. And you can see the syrup sort of discoloured a bit, but that's just ginger. So we don't need to worry about that. What I'm going to do is strain it off in a minute into my jug and put the, sorry, there's another question. Carrots, yes, she just goes in the store cupboard, carrots on the shelf. Like any pickle, it doesn't have to be kept in the fridge or anything like that. So what we're going to do now with the stem ginger is drain it through a sieve, but retaining the cooking liquid. And then we're going to put the cooking liquid. We want 375 ml of cooking water. If we haven't got enough for that, then I can just add some more water. I'm going to add the sugar, and we're going to make the syrup, dissolve the sugar, make the syrup, and put the stem ginger back in and cook it on for about another 20 minutes or so, or however long it takes. If you come to make this, there's no need to stick to absolute cooking times. I'm doing it really because of the timing, but you can just do it until it's tender, and then when you make the syrup and put the ginger in, and you know you're cooking it in the syrup, you will know when it looks like this, then it's okay. You know, it's going to be about 20 to 40 minutes, somewhere in that time frame. But I'm going to do it to time so that I don't keep you late. But so at the moment, I'm going to lift out the ginger and put it into over my jug, so that I can measure how much water we have. I'm not going to tip it to start with, because therein disaster lies. I have learnt some things over the years. That's my ginger. And the liquid. So I'll put that there a second. And I have in there, 600 ml. I thought it was less than that. That's good then. So I've got plenty. So I need about 400, so I need to get down to 2. It's not that critical. So then I'm going to put my sugar in, and the sugar is 250 grams or 8 ounces of sugar. So that goes into the pan. And give that a stir. Same old thing. The sugar won't dissolve off of the heat, but get as much done as you can and dissolved, and then put it on the heat, and the rest will melt into that water. So that's going back onto there. And same as everything else we do, you can hear the sugar, you can feel the sugar, and you have to stir that and heat it until it's smooth and you can't hear it or feel it. You always want to have sugar crystals dissolved, otherwise there's a tendency for them to do what crystals do and grow in the sugary solution, and you'll have crunchy syrup, which isn't very pleasant. It's not harmful, but so we have a question. Brenda, what's the sugar to water ratio? I've got 375 ml of the cooking water and 250 grams of sugar, so it's about 2/3 sugar roughly. And don't start taking the sugar out, because you're just going to not preserve your ginger, which is a shame, because when you've done the work, I mean, let's face it, with this, the biggest lot of work is peeling it really. But you've done the work and made it. You don't want to be reducing it down so that you know, the chemistry is all wrong. So my sugar's dissolved. So now you add the ginger pieces back in to the pan, and they're in their sugar mixture. I'm going to put this remaining water out of the way, otherwise I'm sure to spill it. Cameraman's glasses are steaming up. So now it just needs to cook in its syrup for, as I say, between 20 and 40 minutes, depending on how tender your ginger is. I'm going to just wipe everything here for the moment. I've got that ready for jarring. So what should we do for 20 to 40 minutes? I mean, it's not going to be 40 minutes, but 20 minutes or so. I said that I would show you things that I have been making, and I will. And I've got this, I've also been making, which is called Persian pickled garlic. Now it's said to last for 50 years. I haven't got enough life left to test that, but it's certainly, again, a great thing to have in your store cupboard, that if you don't have any fresh garlic, or you want to use this anyway, you can just use it out of the jar where you would use garlic cloves. So I'll put that down a second, and I'll tell you how you can be there's just one problem with it, that all the coriander seems to gather in one place. So you can see around the back, it looks like a beehive, you know, with all the coriander. So you just have to sort of give it a bit of a shake up, and all the garlic will float to the top as well. So you end up with a rather unattractive piece of a band of vinegar at the bottom, because I keep adding to that jar and I don't seem to be able to fill it up with cloves. They keep on tucking themselves in, so that there's room for more and more. Anyway, if you wanted to have a go at making that, I've got the recipe here. And as it says, it will keep for at least 50 years. And I imagine over that time, it would just get darker and darker and darker, and more kind of, not syrupy exactly, but it would, everything will darken, I'm sure, over time, much as the salted lemons do. You know, they go darker and the juices all mix with the vinegar, and it ends up being much nicer than when it's first made. So what you will need is enough garlic cloves to fill a large jar. That's, again, a 720 ml jar, which is equivalent to an old £2 jam jar. So enough garlic. I did actually, believe it or not, start by filling the jar with garlic to see that it would fill it. And of course, once you take all the skins off, you need more garlic. I did put more garlic in, but it still rises to the top. They just float. That's what they do. It's only an issue if you're trying to sort of display it nicely, and if it's in your own cupboard behind the door, it doesn't matter at all. So you need enough garlic cloves to fill the large jar. You need a tablespoonful of nice sea salt, nice crumbly, you know, nice sea salt. A tablespoonful of whole coriander seeds, 12 peppercorns. Sorry, I'm not going too fast. So a tablespoonful of whole coriander seeds, 12 black peppercorns, 2 to 3 dried chilies. I use bird's eye chilies in that one, which are quite hot. It doesn't matter, use whatever you like. You know, it's not, none of these things, as I keep on saying, it's not a sponge cake. You know, it's like the pickled ginger. I haven't got any white peppercorns, and in a pandemic, I'm not going to drive around to umpteen shops trying to find some white peppercorns. I won't put them in. if I'm using the ginger in a stir fry, it's not going to matter at all. It's just a nice to have if you've got them. So all of these things, learn to adapt. You'll probably improve. I don't mean you, I mean you might improve the recipe. And these are how things get handed on and get changed and new discoveries are made. When you've got that assembled, you just need a pinch if it's dried, or a few sprigs if they're fresh of a green herb. Now you don't want anything too leafy like basil or anything like that. You need tarragon, thyme or marjoram, one of those kind of fairly woody herbs with quite robust leaves on them. And then some cider or wine vinegar, whichever you've got, whichever you prefer. Again, there's no barrier. You can whatever you happen to have. So basically, you're going to peel all the garlic cloves. Happy days! I did it watching the television because I hate peeling garlic cloves, especially a great big jar full. So I peeled them like that, and then again you put them in a bowl. Put the salt over them from the recipe and leave them overnight to draw out any excess moisture, because just like doing pickled onions, they will have moisture in them. I mean, who knew that ginger root had so much moisture in it? You need to draw that out, and then 24 hours later ish, it doesn't matter if it's shorter by a few hours or longer by another night, it won't matter. Drain the garlic cloves in like my little colander, just drain them off, but don't rinse the salt off. The salt in this case is part of the recipe, so just use it to draw out the moisture, drain off that moisture, put all your garlic cloves in your jar, all salty. And then you're going to add all of the other ingredients, the dry ingredients, the coriander seeds, peppercorns, chilies. I wouldn't put the herbs in at this stage. Just put all your dried spices in. You've already got the salt in because it's on the garlic, and then top the jar up with your vinegar. Again, poke the garlic cloves around to make sure there's no air pockets. And it's sometimes a good idea to come back to them the next day and top the vinegar up, because it might have, and they will absorb the vinegar, but because they've given off their moisture into the, with the salt has drawn the moisture out. When they go into the pickling mixture, they will draw that into their cells, the garlic cloves. That's why you do it, so that they take in the vinegar, and that's what preserves them. That's what pickles them. So you need the water out and the vinegar in. And so it will probably need topping up the next day. And then when you've done all that and you've got it all, you've poked it about with your knife, got the air pockets out, or you can use a chopstick or a skewer or anything, just something to release any air that's in there. If you get you can only just about see them now on the side there. If you get your green herbs, 3 or 4 sprigs, they don't need to be too big, and just poke them down the side, and then they look sort of pretty around the edge rather than just being on the top where you can't see them. And their flavour also will distribute throughout the garlic cloves evenly, hopefully. And then put the top on, put it in the cupboard, and it's ready for use after about 2 weeks. Don't use it before, it will be too raw, really. It needs to develop some flavour and all start mixing together, all those spices and everything. You need to give it a chance. But again, if you've got those in the cupboard, you've always got some garlic there that's got added flavour. There's nothing there that will affect adversely the flavour of a recipe that you might be making. Quite the opposite, I would have said. And they're great to have to just add to things as you could eat them raw, you know, with lunch or something. You could have them as like olives, but have pickled garlic cloves. Lots of people do eat cloves of garlic. I'm not. Well, I say I'm not a fan. It's my metabolism is not a fan. My digestive system's not a fan. Ever since I had all my medical treatment, I can't eat spicy things, hot things, and all that kind of thing without a lot of pain involved. So sometimes I can't resist a curry, and I have it, and I put up with all the you know, gripey stomach ache and everything, but that's what it is. But if that's your thing, you know, you can make it part of a lunch, you know, spread. If you all different salads and things, and you could have those in a bowl, like as I say, you have olives and sun-dried tomatoes and things like that. And very, very versatile. Again, a great present for a cook. If you're making up, I mean, you could have 2 or 3 of these things. Really unusual, but simple to do and not overly expensive. And if you grow garlic, of course, it's a very good way of preserving the cloves. You know, you grow them, you dry them, but by kind of late autumn, getting into the winter, it's all getting a bit, oh, has this one got anything in it? You know, you've just got the paper shell. Because you're coming round to the time when you've got to plant the new cloves, and everything's got its time. But that would preserve them and make you be able to use them whenever you wanted to, and they'd be all nice and fat and ready to go. And you wouldn't have to peel them either for the recipe, whatever you're making, stir fries or, again, Thai, Asian cooking, anything. It's they'll be really, really useful. This is cooking on nicely. I'm getting there. So have you got any questions about the garlic or the ginger or anything that you need a recap on? I mean, I would put them in this size of jar for me, but you could always put them in 2 or 3 smaller jars. Use the same recipe. You can see the sort of ratio. Again, as long as you've got the vinegar, you've done your salting, and you've got your all the spices and so on, you could, you know, increase it or lower it a bit and spread it out through 2 or 3 smaller jars, especially if you're gifting or if you're selling. If you go to a market and sell your things, then it would make a really eye-catching preserve. You know, it's not your usual standard jam and chutney. You can see how this is coming along. Coming up to our 20 minutes. What I did think with this, two things really. With the when I didn't have any rice vinegar, I was thinking of using my lemon vinegar in it, and I think that would be really delicious in the ginger. And when I make it again, I might try that and see, you know, how it, because that would be a really good use for the lemon vinegar. And I also thought with the stem ginger in the syrup, it might be nice to have some curls of lemon peel in the jar with the ginger. I think that would be rather nice as well. So you could put that in at the end if you wanted to. While that's just carrying on cooking, I'll just talk. Next week we'll be doing salts, really, all sorts of salt, preserving herbs and various things in salt. So I love making these, and the ideas are endless, but we'll make an especially nice one, which is rosemary and orange herb salt, which is absolutely delicious, especially if you're fond of making your own great big chunky oven chips. So it's absolutely delicious on there. And we'll go through, you know, the various options and look at salt in more detail as well. So the herbs are all coming along in the garden now, and this is an ideal time to use them because they're lovely and fresh. They're packed with flavour. They haven't lost their colour in the sunshine and you know, the hot sun of summer when they all get a bit sort of tired looking. So this is the time of year to make them. So what I'm going to do now is turn that off. I'm just going to test it with my knife, which is probably a good idea. It's nice and soft. What size jars do we need for next week? Any jar really. The salt, it depends how you're going to use them. If you're going to sell them, I suggest you do them in a 125 gram jar, which is a 4-ounce jar, because then you can sell them as being really special, which they are. Just because something's easy to make, it doesn't mean that, you know, it's not valuable. So when I sell them, I do them in a 4-ounce jar, 125 grams. But if you're going to use them for yourself, then I would say a sort of 200-ish gram, an 8-ounce jar. You could store them in bags if you wanted to, or in sort of plastic boxes if you've got them, but it's nicer in a jar. Just anything that's convenient, really. They're completely ambient temperature and they last indefinitely, so you don't have to sort of fuss about it. Just do, if you're going to use them for yourself, you know, for cooking and as a meat rub or something like that, then I generally have them in a spring top, a clip top jar, so that I could just keep opening and closing it, and you know, it's a nice big opening that you can get spoons in and so on. Right, I'm just going to rinse my funnel because I used it for the vinegar. You would think selling these I'd have more than one, wouldn't you? Anyway, it's not that organised. Right, so I've got yet another jar of the £2 720ml variety. I'm not sure that the funnel actually is going to be a lot of use because the lumps are probably bigger than the opening. So I'll put that on my mat. You can see all the ginger in there. So I very carefully try and get it into the jar without getting the outside too sugary. I hope I've guesstimated the amount of ginger right, but if I haven't, it doesn't matter, because only for me or my use at the moment. Put that in. So far so good. I could have done with a little bit more, but never mind. Cut that so I don't take the spoon out. Now then, let's put that there. And then you spoon in your ginger syrup as well. I actually think it probably needs a bit more than 375. I think when I made the first jar, I think I put more water in than it said. So I would increase that to at least 500, I would say, 500 ml of cooking water. It's only just coming up to the top there. But anyway, not to worry, it's all under the syrup. That's the main thing. And probably if I've had more ginger, it would have been okay. But anyway, There we are. I'll put that lid on there. And, you know, for sort of 2 lots of boiling really and some peeling, it's pretty simple to do. And you know, and it's, as I say, if you can buy it economically at somewhere like Asian markets or something, then, you know, it's a good thing to have on your shelf and use, because you don't need to just use it. I mean, you can use it in cakes and biscuits and things like that. You can stir it through ice cream, you know, chunks. If you're a gingery person, you could stir it through cream. For a pavlova, you could stir it through the meringue if you wanted to, before you cook it. Through the cream, you could use pineapple or banana in the pavlova, all kinds of things. And use the juice as well. When you've used all the ginger, then use the syrup. You can use it as a long drink with sparkling water or soda or something like that, or even with Prosecco, or you know, make it into an adult drink. Where's my recipe gone? Yeah, that's the main uses really. I mean, wherever I don't know that I'd use it. I think I'd use the pickled ginger in savoury things, and then use the stem ginger in sweeter things. But I found a recipe tonight. Actually, I've got a new recipe book I'd ordered, which is all about no waste food. So it's all about making things where you use absolutely everything. It's more general cooking than preserving. But I thought, oh, I opened it quickly, and I opened the first page, and it fell open at the page making marshmallows using chopped stem ginger. So I thought, oh, okay then. I've never made marshmallows. I keep meaning to, but I think they might be just a bit too delicious, and I might end up having it too often. But certainly, you know, once you've got a great big jar full in your cupboard, you can you know, go ahead and use it for whatever you want to. Have it, stir it through your porridge if you like. You know, if that's your thing, then you know, go for it. So what's that? Yeah, just in I don't know. Yeah, just put a bit more sugar then, Katie. If you or use a smaller jar. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Use a smaller jar. It was just slightly too big. It was all right that the first time I made it, but not this time. So that's how it goes. But yeah, don't just increase the water. I also might have cooked away too much water in the cooking the second time, which because it was cooking on. So it, you know, it'll all be fine. So could you use this for making masala chai tea? I would think so. Yes, I think it's just gingery syrup. So I mean, you could mix it in. You could just make tea with it. Just put some in a mug and add some boiling water, and sip it as a hot drink. And as I said, it's, you know, very good if you've got sort of kind of digestive. You know, a lot of people live with a lot of digestive pain, which is just, it's not a thing. It's not it's not an illness. It's just something, you're just uncomfortable. And so sipping something like ginger tea or the cordial we made, having that hot and just sipping it, is just soothing. And it also has its medicinal effect. It's the same as if you've got a sort of tickly cough. The ginger cordial is great for that, just soothing it all down and settling it down instead of that keep on cough, cough, cough. So yeah, don't waste it. Don't you know, add it into things. And if nothing else, in a bit later on, if you're making some chutney or something, if it's got some ginger in it already, you know, as an ingredient, then if you've got some syrup left, just put that in as part of the sugar content. You can add that into the chutney and just reduce the sugar slightly, and then that uses it up as well without, you know, the last thing you want to do is just put it in the bin or down the sink, you know. So, any more questions? Cara says she makes a really nice ginger cake which uses stem ginger and syrup. Yeah, exactly. And you could, of course, make the icing, if you're going to ice it with a sort of white icing or something, you mix it maybe with lemon juice, the icing, and chop the ginger up, put it in the icing and put that over the top. That's lovely as well. Or you can just eat it out of the jar like my mother used to. Can you use it straight away? Best to leave it for a couple of weeks. No, I think you can use it straight away, Tracy, if you need to. You know, all these things benefit from maturing, as shall we say. But if, you know, it would be very powerful, the flavour straight away from the get-go, really. Let it cool down though first. And yes, it can be stored at room temperature. Everything we're doing, Elizabeth, is really all about ambient temperature. Apart from when I did the different butters the other week, that's just convenience. Butter will store for a long, long time in the fridge, but just for convenience, we put the butters in the freezer. But what I'm teaching isn't about refrigeration or freezing in the main. I will always tell you if something needs to be refrigerated. Other than that, it just goes on a shelf. This is what our ancestors did. I mean, my family didn't have a fridge until I was about 12 years old. So domestic refrigeration is a relatively new concept. If you think about the starting of preserving it in Stone Age times, we've gone through all of those thousands of years coping without refrigeration for food preservation, and that's really what we're exploring through all of these workshops. So yeah, even if it's opened, it's in its syrup, the sugar. That's why it's important not to mess about with reducing the sugar in recipes. You can always put a bit more in if you want to, but don't reduce them, because they're there as a preservative. It's not harmful to you in the way that the sugars in processed food are. Natural sugar is something that the body is used to dealing with, and in moderate amounts. I mean, Caris makes a cake, she puts some stem ginger in it, some of the syrup, but she's not eating it at every meal. She'll eat it at, you know, maybe a slice a day, which is minimal sugar compared to the amount of sugar that people routinely eat in processed food. Because all processed food, whether it's sweet or not, has sugar in it. And the sugar is there to really make it addictive, to make you want to eat more of it. So as I've said before, if you have something like a pizza, it's got lots of glucose fructose in it, which gives you the addiction part of it. And it also helps with the processing of the ingredients through machinery. If you try and put a load of granulated sugar in something and put it through a machine, it very quickly gets all gummed up. It's very, very cheap. That's the other big thing about it. So they add a whole load of sugar, and then they'll add a similar amount of salt to counteract the sweetness, which then gives you biologically a double whammy. People worry and worry and worry about sugar because they lump all the sugar in together, all type of sugar, because that's just food labeling, because legally they should identify whether sugars are artificial or not, but they don't, and so everybody gets horrified at the amount of sugar and start taking out the good sugar that we can eat, that we can metabolize, that doesn't make us crave more and more and more. And also we don't get all this salt as well. It's no wonder we've all got high blood pressure and goodness knows what, because if you eat processed food, that's what you're getting. It's the baseline manufacturing before they start adding anything else. And the book I told you about, Joanna Blytheman's Swallow This, and she said some of the food has got no food in it whatsoever. Everything is a chemical. even things that look like food aren't. So you have to be really, really careful and very, up on your game on this to understand if you buy processed food, what you're eating, and do it consciously. We all get stuck sometimes where there's nothing open except McDonald's, but do it consciously. Don't do it that it becomes a habit, because it's not a habit you really want to get into. So everything we're making, very simple ingredients, very straightforward. The only thing we'll use that comes close to a chemical is citric acid, and that's made from citrus. So in our case, the citric acid that we use, it may be a completely chemically made thing in food manufacturing, but we're using, a more natural version. So, and that's about as chemical as it gets, and everything else is recognizable as a food. And I think that's fundamentally the most important thing about all of this, is understanding what we can do, what the chemistry is, how it preserves, how it keeps. So we've cooked out in terms of the ginger. Well, we didn't cook the ginger. We reduced the moisture by salting it and added left the salt in. No, we rinsed it off on that, wasn't it? It's the garlic we left the salt in. But add the vinegar. The vinegar is a preservative. If it doesn't get diluted, then it will preserve what is in it. And it's the same with the sugar. You get the sugar right, the ratio right, and your food will stay preserved quite safely, pretty much indefinitely, although we're not really supposed to say that. Everything needs a shelf life, so you get rid of it and get some more. But in our case, we were making it, so we're not trying to, it will keep. I mean, it will just keep for years, in actual fact, quite safely. But commercial products, of course, need to be replaced. They need to encourage you to replace them frequently, and that's what happens. It's not because the food is off. And as I demonstrated with the mince pies at Christmas, 18-month-old, and they're still like they were the day they were made. And that's not a good thing in a mince pie, but that's the reality. But it's still got a use-by date when you have to throw it away and get some more. So some good products there, I think. Some good, get my ginger one back. So we've got the stem ginger and the pickled ginger, and also the quick pickled Persian garlic as well. I'm not sure Persia is quite the thing these days, but in terms of it's not known as Persia anymore, but it doesn't matter. It's Persian pickled garlic, and they're very, very useful to have on the shelf as well. So no water bath for pickled or stem ginger. No. They've both got heat. They've both been heated. As the products cool, they will shrink slightly, and that pulls the lid down on the seal on the jar, and a vacuum is formed in the gap. That as they shrink, a gap is formed, and in that gap, nothing can grow, or no yeast or mold or anything like that. So they'll be quite safe. As long as when you use them, you ensure that things are still under their liquid. So don't drain so much syrup out of the ginger that it isn't underneath the syrup level. And same with the pickle ones. If you start to use too much of the vinegar, then just top it up with a bit more vinegar, just to keep it from drying out or being exposed to the air in the jar. Okay, are there any more questions? So great. So thank you for listening and watching, and I hope you have some fun making these things. And next week will be herb salts, which are also great fun. So I'll see you then.